Clerk, the time is 6:03. I'm going to call this special meeting of council to order. The town of Aurora acknowledges that the Anishinaabe lands on which we live and work are the traditional and treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island, as well as many other nations whose presence here continues to this day. As the closest First Nation community to Aurora, we recognize the special relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and as a municipality, we join them in these responsibilities. We further acknowledge that Aurora is part of the treaty lands of the Mississaugas and Chippewas, recognized through Treaty Number 13, as well as the Williams Treaties of 1923. A shared understanding of the rich cultural heritage that has existed for centuries and how our collective past brought us to where we are today will help us walk together into a better future. Council, can I get a motion to approve the agenda with the added items? I'll need 2/3. Someone like to move that? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Kim. We are doing e-scribe tonight. So we'll call the vote. Councillor Gilliland, Councillor Gaertner. Both yeses. And I'm a yes, I'm still logging in as well. I'm a yes as well. That carries. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? The general nature thereof. Seeing none, we have 6 delegations. First up, 5.1, Gerry Miller, resident, regarding item 7.3, amendment for the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame grant. Mr. Miller, welcome. You have 5 minutes. Floor is yours.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, town staff, my colleagues, guests, and honored Hall of Fame members. I'm here speaking to agenda item 7.3 put forward by Councillor Gaertner to defund the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame and the town grant of $31,725. For the record, I am legal counsel to the Hall of Fame. It is being suggested that the Hall of Fame is in a financially healthy position today, and rather than accept money from the town, it should first spend its operating reserve. The perception is this is fiscally responsible and serves the town of Aurora taxpayers. I will speak to this fiscal issue, while others may speak to the importance of our cultural partnership with the town, our induction event, the value proposition afforded to the town as a result of our partnership, and the contributions made by our many volunteers. The Aurora Sports Hall of Fame was the brainchild of Christian Daja over 10 years ago, who shared it with Councillor Weese, who was president of Sport Aurora at the time. The two of them developed a strategy to follow other municipalities and create a municipal Hall of Fame. To achieve that, Sport Aurora applied for and received an Ontario Trillium grant of approximately $200,000. That was when I got involved on the induction committee and as legal counsel. As a born and raised Auroran with deep roots in sports and the son of a 20-year ex-town councillor, I felt honored to be asked to join this group of people. In 2013, I incorporated the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame as a not-for-profit corporation. The letter's patent provided management for Sport Aurora was through Sport Aurora, as well as partners with the town of Aurora, the Historical Society, and the education community. The Trillium Grant was the impetus to get the Hall of Fame started. The Trillium Grant had a lifespan of 3 years, and that sustainable funding from the town was be required for our future. This was fully supported by the town board member Al Downey at the time, who recommended that the Hall of Fame should follow accounting principles followed by other successful organizations, including the town of Aurora itself, because that is what the town would be looking for in evaluating any request for grants. The recommendation was to create an operating reserve so we could display to council that we had at a minimum 1 year financing for operations in case of an unexpected event. The 1 year operating reserve amount was $75,000 as recommended by Al Downey and our accountant Don Ball and supported by Councillor Weese, who was at the time president and chair of the Hall of Fame. Each year during budget time, we ignored that reserve because we knew from President Weese, Al, and Don that we had to fund all our initiatives outside of the reserve. The initial grant request to the town was for $50,000. That grant application was advanced in November 2016 by then President Weese and Nancy Black. The town gave the Hall of Fame a grant for $50,000, $20,000 to pay for curatorial services, and the remaining $30,000 for operational costs. The $20,000 was immediately paid back to the town as that was the services agreement. The deal was that all other initiatives supported by the Hall of Fame would have to be self-funded. That is why the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame applied for and achieved charitable status. We wanted to engage in a number of outreach initiatives in education, and we wanted to be able to fundraise as part of our commitment to the town that over and above the operational costs, we would be self-sustainable for all of these initiatives that we wish to undertake. So for example, the induction dinner was self-funded. We made sufficient revenue to pay for expenses. That is our and has always been our guiding principle. And that is a guiding principle that was advanced by Councillor Weese. Our financial structure was designed after the town accounting model for reserves, which is based generally on an accepted accounting principle to have an operation of reserve. The town's grant is to pay for operational costs, period. In my opinion, it is financially irresponsible to fund operations out of an operational reserve unless the organization is forced to because of an unexpected event. Defunding our organization is not an unexpected event. If council believe this is an acceptable course of action to protect tax-paying citizens of Aurora, then to be consistent, council should expect all of the organizations in town to follow the same model. That includes fire services, the library, cultural center, and historical society. To take it a step further, to go to the level of absurd, rather than raise taxes this year, town should decide to dip into its town reserves and not raise taxes at all. I suspect the answer to this is that it's contrary to all accounting and legal principles and would result in I'm going to wrap it up, and be contrary to any proper accounting organization. Now let's look at the flip side of responsibility. The value proposition in return for the town for its grant, the town receives over 3,000 volunteer hours of its citizens advancing town objectives. At an average of $100 per hour, that means the town's value proposition and return on investment is tenfold. Look at it another way. How much would the proposed motion, if approved, save homeowners in Aurora? In 2021, there were 21,510 homes in Aurora, and that does not include commercial properties. This grant costs each household an average of $1.47, which is less than a medium Tim Hortons coffee. So this motion to defund the hall is going to save me $1.47. It should also be pointed out that 45 volunteers in
Mr.
town.
Miller, I don't mean to, I'm going to have to cut you off. If you can just wrap it up real quickly.
Sure.
Thank you.
I think defunding the organization is a slap on the face of all our volunteers. I submit, both as a taxpayer and as a volunteer with the Sports Hall of Fame, that Councillor Gaertner withdraw her motion. In the alternative, council reject this motion to defund the organization. In the event that council disregards my submissions and other submissions to be made tonight, I would respectfully request the mayor veto such motion and begin the process to seek a 2/3 majority at council to reconsider its decision. Mr. Mayor, members of council, those are my respectful submissions, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Also, can I first get a motion to receive and refer? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Weese, any questions for the delegate? Seeing none. Mr. Miller, thank you very much for coming this evening. Call the vote. Councillor Gilliland. Councillor Gilliland's yes. That carries. Thank you. Next, we have 5.2, Jim Clark, resident, regarding 7.3 as well. Mr. Clark, I'm just going to remind everyone, 5 minutes, please. I'll cut you a little slack at the end, but not too much. Floor is yours. You have 5 minutes, Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jim Clark, and I am an Aurora resident and an honored member of the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame. I'm in the builder category for my volunteer work in the Canadian golf world. One of my most favorite roles that I've played in the Canadian golf world was that I was the chairman of the Canadian Golf Hall of Fame and Museum for 7 years. During this time, I had the pleasure to be invited to several Sports Hall of Fame induction ceremonies. These ranged from small communities like Aurora to much larger municipalities, as well as both provincial and national sports halls of fame. I really enjoyed seeing how the athletes and builders were honored by these halls and in learning about the various people and their contribution to sport in their communities. It was always a very proud moment for the inductees and their families and friends. In 2019, I got the call that I would be inducted into the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame. From that moment that I got the call, I was overwhelmed by the team of volunteers that accompanied me through the process to the induction ceremony. The professionalism, enthusiasm, and dedication of those volunteers was unlike anything I'd ever seen before, and I come from the volunteer world. The induction ceremony at St. Andrew's College was a first-class production. Compared to many of the other Sports Hall of Fame ceremonies that I had witnessed, Aurora was by far the most impressive in every aspect. Here again, Aurora was fighting way above our weight class compared to much larger municipalities. On Remembrance Day this month, I went to the cenotaph in my hometown of Midland for the community ceremony. Afterwards, I went to the Legion to see some of my old family friends that I don't see very often. A man came up to me and said, "You live in Aurora, don't you?" I said, "Yes, I do." He then told me that he had been at the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame induction ceremony the week before. He was there for an old friend, Laurie Buckland, who was inducted posthumously this year. He told me how impressed he was by the evening, and he'd been telling anyone who would listen about the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame induction. Again, Aurora impresses beyond our borders. Our Hall of Fame has many heroes in it. The athletes that have been honored serve as an inspiration to the youth of our town. As Aurora grows over the next decades, the Hall of Fame will honor a much more varied and diversified profile of inductee. This place of celebration and of boasting about who lives or who has lived in Aurora, and it will be incredible. This year, we had a young man who started to play soccer with the Aurora Youth Soccer. He played in the World Cup. Next year, there will be Olympians from Aurora. These will be the future inductees and the people who generations of youth in Aurora will undoubtedly see as their heroes and inspirations. While there are many cultural institutions in Aurora that play an important part in the fabric of our community, the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame crosses from sport in Aurora to the heritage and history of Aurora. I ask that you consider the important legacy that it helps preserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Councillor, can I get a motion to receive and refer to 7.3? Councillor Gaertner, Councillor Weese, any questions for the delegate? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. That carries. 5.3, David Thom, resident, regarding 7.3. Thom, welcome. Just remind you, 5 minutes. The floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, everybody. Good evening, everyone. My name is David Thom. I'm a longstanding resident, currently the past president of the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame. I wear several hats in the organization, from Executive Committee, the Induction Celebration Committee, and also the Cornerstone Committee, which is our fundraising arm. Tonight, I'm here to address the Amendment 7.3 as presented by Councillor Gaertner. Firstly, I want to express our deep appreciation for the ongoing partnership we have with the town of Aurora. It's been an integral part of our journey since the beginning. Our collaboration goes beyond a mere association. It's a true partnership that involves active participation and shared responsibilities. This is evident in the fact that we have dedicated council and staff representation on our volunteer and our working-driven Board of Governors. Their involvement ensures that the town of Aurora has a direct role in shaping the vision and activities of the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame. And furthermore, our partnership is underlined by a shared financial commitment. Both the town and the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame contribute to our collective success by investing in resources and expertise. This financial synergy enables us to undertake ambitious projects, sustain ongoing activities, and ensure the overall growth and sustainability of the organization. Together with the town's representatives working alongside us, we are focused on the common goal of building an Aurora Sports Hall of Fame that not only preserves our rich sporting heritage, but also elevates our community's pride in sport. This joint effort reflects a shared dedication to fostering a vibrant and impactful sports culture within our town, making the Sports Hall of Fame a source of inspiration and celebration for everyone in our community. Now, let's talk for a minute about the establishment of our current reserve fund. As you've heard, the decision wasn't made in isolation. It emerged as a collective recommendation from the Town of Aurora Council in collaboration with our former treasurer. The strategic thinking behind this move was to establish a financial buffer, approximately 1 year's worth of operating expenses. The purpose behind this prudent measure is to provide a safety net in the face of unexpected events, ranging from disasters and pandemics to potential fluctuations in our fundraising opportunities. Delving into the financial aspects, this decision aligns with sound accounting principles. The practice of maintaining a reserve fund is recognized as a wise and forward-thinking approach to just about any business. It ensures the continuous and successful operation of not only the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame, but parallels the practice of well-managed business from across the country. This financial foresight serves as a shield against uncertainties, enabling us to navigate challenges effectively and sustain the impactful work of the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame over the long term. As an organization, we are dedicated to seeking new avenues to generate funds. Our goal is to expand the programs we provide for our community. We take pride in the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame, not just as one of the best in the province, but possibly the entire country. It is a showcase of our prominent builders, coaches, and athletes, along with programs that reach out to our community, including our education program, the induction celebration, future Hall of Famers, our artifact displays, and much, much more. All of this is made possible through continued fundraising efforts, and again, our sound accounting principles, effective management, and of course, our strong partnership with the town. As we look to the future, our excitement for the years ahead is tremendous. The prospect of continued collaboration and partnership with the town fills us with enthusiasm. Together, as one of our cultural partners, we are poised for a journey of shared accomplishments, fostering excellence and deepening our engagement with the community. Our joint commitment to excellence stands as a guiding principle, inspiring us to reach new heights and set even loftier goals. The Aurora Sports Hall of Fame, a testament to the strength of our collaboration, is not just a collection of artifacts and stories, it's a living, breathing entity that reflects the heart and spirit of our community. I'm confident that our partnership will continue to write chapters of success, resilience, and community pride. Thank you for being a vital part of this extraordinary adventure, and I sincerely hope that the amendment in front of us and in front of you and council is defeated. Here's some exciting chapters that await us in this collective path of growth and achievement. And I want to thank you very much for your time, and I'm welcome any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Thom. First, council, can I get a motion to receive and refer? Councillor Gallo, Councillor Thompson, any questions for the delegate? Seeing none, Mr. Thom, thank you very much for coming this evening. Call a vote. Councillor Thompson. Oh, that carries. 5.4. Former Councillor Sandra Humfryes regarding item 7.3. 5 minutes and the floor is yours. You know 5 minutes. I'm going to cut you off.
I'll be, I promise I'll be brief and not long-winded like usual. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Honorable Mayor, members of council, and Aurora Town staff. I will be brief, I promise. As a new member director on the Board of Governors for the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame, I'm here to ask for your kind consideration to vote against a reduction of $31,725 of funding support. The Aurora Sport Hall of Fame adheres to all Town of Aurora grant regulations. We're very proud of our financial model and ensure that our budgeting remains consistent and our finances healthy. The Aurora Sport Hall of Fame has a strong and positive relationship with the town of Aurora, delivering an exceptional product, showcasing our local top sport talent, celebrating those incredible individuals in an honorable way. The proposed amendment to remove a significant portion of its funding, if approved, devalues the Aurora Sport Hall of Fame and its work to celebrate excellence in sports and sport history in Aurora. It's disheartening to see that this direct hit is only focused on this one organization. We've witnessed approval of far greater funding for other partnership organizations have had far more sizable funding asks approved. Why focus cuts on an organization that has been consistent with and successful in its financial management? As a reminder, all communication, marketing, and media highlights our partnership and joint successes with the town of Aurora. I truly hope that the councillors will reject their proposed amendment to cut councillor and mayors, funding to the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame. Instead, embrace the continued partnership between the town of Aurora and the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame and vote in favor of the full anticipated funding. Let's continue to move forward positively and in the spirit of partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I get a motion to receive and refer? Councillor Kim, Councillor Gallo. Any questions for the delegate? Seeing none, call vote. Humfryes, thank you very much for coming this evening. That carries. Next, 5.5. Former Deputy Mayor Bob McRoberts. Welcome, Mr. McRoberts. You know the drill as well. 5 minutes. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, councillors and staff, good evening. My name is Bob McRoberts. I am a lifelong Auroran. I am opposed to Amendment 7.3 that the Sports Hall of Fame for Aurora not receive the grant of $31,725. My involvement with Ashoff began in 2012 as a founding member. The town of Aurora has been an instrumental partner since the beginning. I am astonished that such an amendment has come forward. At last Monday's budget meeting, a councillor suggested that Ashoff should be using up its reserve fund before coming to ask for any monetary support from council. This is contrary to town staff's recommendation when the hall began that Ashoff should establish a reserve as part of sound financial planning, that the reserve should be enough to sustain the organization for at least 1 year of operation in case of some catastrophe. If council passes Amendment 7.3 and forces Ashoff to use up its reserves, it will likely be the last year of operation. The hall will either become fossilized or the town will have to hire staff to continue its operation. The first word in Ashoff is Aurora. It's an Aurora entity currently run by volunteers in partnership with the town. There are approximately 34 adult and 7 student volunteers who donate hundreds of hours each year to keep Ashoff current and vibrant. These people, along with all who have attended Ashoff events over the years, would hope the council appreciates and respects the work of its community volunteers, rather than considering cutting operational funding. If more of you had been able to attend an induction evening, you'd see firsthand that it's more than just a house party. Each year, it sells out to an enthusiastic crowd to honor Aurora's sports icons, past and present. Ashoff has received charitable status from the federal government, primarily for its educational component and the work it has done in schools for the students of Aurora. You are considering defunding a charity. I find it curious that the proponent proposed amendment pertains to only one of the town's cultural partners. For example, when Church Street School Building became the cultural center, the plan was for it to be self-funding by the end of year 3. Why not be fair and require all the town's cultural groups that annually seek financial support to use their reserves? To provide Ashoff with the funds being asked for has no impact on the town's levy. Other than an inflationary sum of about $800, the funds are already in the budget. To cut the $31,725 being asked for will impact the town's budget by only about 0.06%. The operation of Ashoff is of value to our community. It celebrates sport history and excellence. It's a place of history, stimulating pride in and appreciation for our community's rich culture and heritage. Please realize the benefits of the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame and oppose Amendment 7.3.
Thank you, Mr. McRoberts. Council, can I get a motion to receive and refer? Councillor Gaertner, Councillor Weese, any questions for the delegate? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. Bob, thank you very much for coming this evening. That carries. 5.6, Nancy Black, regarding item 7.3. Ms. Black, welcome. You have 5 minutes.
I think it's kind of funny because my first thought is that, you know how when somebody finishes a wonderful speech, you think it's all been said, but somebody else joins and I'm going to say more, but so much has been said. So thank you for letting me speak to you tonight. My name is Nancy Black. I'm a former executive director of the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame, but in addition to the stuff that I'm doing, including working with the Ontario Sports Hall of Fame now, I'm proud to say that I'm studying Italian as an undergraduate student at University of Toronto. I mentioned that not to impress you much, but know that the centerpiece of the work that I'm doing, for which I've received a fellowship and 2 scholarships, is because they know that I'm endeavoring to found the Italian Canadian Sports Hall of Fame. So while I may have left the hall officially, I've never really left the absolute belief in the value of honoring our past. And obviously where my focus is, and like the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame focuses, honoring sport, the people, their institutions, and the sport heritage overall. When I heard about this motion, and obviously I heard about it, you know, I'm still very invested with this hall, if not practically, certainly emotionally, like many others. I was actually stunned. So then I was like, why? Well, how much is the hall asking for? And then I heard that number of 31,000. What is this amount? And if there's any part of this next sentence that sounds rude, I don't mean to be, but I thought, is this what the town is wishing to show frugality on? Like a $31,000 investment in this iconic property? So then I thought back to when I was shown back in 2016, Councillor Weese and I, who was a former president of the Hall of Fame, stood before another council asking for a little bit of money and rattling off all the things we had done and all the things that we were going to do for community. We talked about in Ron's words how the hall was professionally managed and volunteer run, and our organization that celebrates, you know, Aurora's sport history. That phrase is important because it was to remind us and you that while we needed funding to pay for some roles, the professionally managed part, it was our volunteers that carried out much of the work. And the Ontario Trillium Foundation, that also doles out money to good organizations, has a mathematical formula for that. That's basically, you know, tracks the impact of their dollars and what it does when it gets splooched out by the volunteers involved in the organizations. So with that philosophy in mind, I talked to you about how we were in a partnership with you, and although we received funding, and it's been mentioned before, that's why I mentioned the repetition part. We take your money, and then we leverage that money into thousands and thousands of dollars more. But it was also mentioned about identity. So speaking of one thing, it didn't really come up before, but I remember being a little bit annoyed by the fact that in the world's eyes, and as Mr. Clark mentioned, when people talk about the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame, they already think it's the town. Like they do think that it's the town that has done all this work and not this other entity that is a part and with you. when we designed the logo, the colors of the town were used to make sure that there was that corroboration with the town and the Hall of Fame. So back to that presentation, I know that, you know, the part that I think it's funny as it, now when I reflect on it, that I was supposed to speak to you about fiscal management and fiscal responsibility, but it was something we took really seriously when we got to our money. And I understand that's how the hall is still being run now. I don't want to go through it. It was mentioned about the reserve, the rationale behind the reserve. You've covered that off. And I thought that I remember that thinking the hall was supposed to have a reserve. That was my thought before it got mentioned here tonight. So then I went through the process of thinking, well, if that's it, if you're going to eliminate the funding, you know, is this carried across to like, is this happening? The town is doing this to everybody else? Are you doing it to everybody to whom you're fund? And if you're not, then is the is the hall being targeted? Is there something behind the rationale for this motion that I'm missing? And I was thinking, like, what message does that send to the citizens of the community and beyond? That you don't value, is that a minute, Vernon, or is I'm done? 1 minute. Yes, that you don't value sport heritage. What about the commitment to the sports plan? This really brings into question the town's stated support of excellence in sport, and the Hall of Fame is part of that. I thought about the inductees, and I thought about so many people that have been impacted by this hall and what this message sends to them, the Hall of Famers, the kids involved, our future Hall of Famer programs, the kids in the education program. And then it's like, it's the hall's 10th anniversary. It's a pretty bad year to be considering this when there should be such a celebratory tone to this iconic entity. So I also ask that council strongly reject this motion with the words that will remind others of the importance of this hall. Thank you for letting me speak with you tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Black. Councillor, a motion to receive and refer. Councillor Weese, Councillor Thompson, any questions for the delegate? Seeing none, I call the vote. Oh, it carries. Councillor Kim, did you?
That I was impressed that you taking Italian.
Councillor, I appreciate it. I'm not gonna, I can't let you jump in like that. I thought you had a question for me for procedurally. Council will move to number 6, consideration of items requiring discussion. 6.1, which is the proposed 2024 municipal tax increase comparison. It's someone to move the recommendation to receive this for information. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Kim, any comments or questions? Seeing none. Oh, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just specific to York Region, you note that it's the proposed budget is 3.75%. Can you just speak quickly to what their process is and when they timelines in terms of when they hope to have the finalized number?
And thank you for the question, Councillor. We are currently in budget season, as you're aware. That is the proposed tax rate increase. We will be going through our budget this ending of this month and including the month of December before we finish up for the holiday. And if everything goes well, we'll be passing that, and it will probably be at the 3.75% mark.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Call the vote. That carries. Let's move to the amendments. 7.1. Councillor Thompson.
Can I ask that we move 7.3 forward, given the delegations as well as the people in the audience?
Sure, I'll move that forward unless there are any objections. And none. So we'll go to 7.3. Councillor Gaertner, this is your amendment. Would you like to move it?
Yes, I would, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Weese. Councillor Gaertner, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My motion isn't meant to be disrespectful to the hard work and the meaning of sport and the success of the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame. I remember when Miss Black came forward to ask for a space at the SARC, I had no idea that this kind of space could be created so beautifully. So I have nothing but admiration. The Sports Hall of Fame has been very successful in gathering sponsorship and fundraising. And when I look at the balance sheet of $100,000 in that reserve fund, that's the amount of money that the cultural center has. And I believe that your success means that you no longer require that operating funding. Certainly for the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame, because that is a community staple now. But that's how I came to this motion, and I think it's fair. That's all I have to say for now.
Thank you, Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was a bit stunned when I read Councillor Gaertner's amendment to essentially defund the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame. I think it's completely irresponsible and to even table such an amendment. And I say this with the utmost respect. I rank the Sports Hall of Fame as one of the more critical organizations in our town. The value they provide to our town for the small funding we provide is tremendous. There's not one mention of larger budget items such as $900,000 for radios for Central York Fire. No one commented on that. If someone wanted 30,000 from there, I'm sure it probably could have been done. There's a lot of bigger ask in the hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars in our budget, and yet, Councillor Gaertner chooses the Sports Hall of Fame, which asks very little and pays huge dividends for our town. I go to the SARC at least weekly, and when I go there, I see people of all ages admiring those whose photos adorn the walls. They read diligently the commentary next to each Hall of Fame member. This encourages and inspires young residents to strive beyond what they think is humanly possible. We all know that sport is more than sport itself. Sports brings community and residents together. The Aurora Sports Hall of Fame unites our town and brings all Aurorans great pride in those in the hall, in our town, and our fellow residents. With respect to reserves, as former Councillor Bob McRoberts, who has a fantastic voice, by the way, mentioned that there's no, every town organization has a reserve fund. There's a difference between excessive reserves and what is prudent, and I think what the reserve levels that the Sports Hall of Fame has is a prudent level. So, I'll just conclude with that, but I would not be in support of the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. Councillor Weese.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank all the delegates, friends and colleagues who have come forward to talk about the Hall of Fame. Nancy for coming here from such a distance. I actually have to agree with almost everything that's been said, including Councillor Gaertner with her discussion about the reserves. And I can tell you that that's the only thing that matters here is just a matter of management. And with respect to things such as the Central York Fire and others that are somewhat required by us to fund, this is not one of those things. I will admit that it's a smaller amount than you would see elsewhere, but you will see on the agenda tonight others that are not so small. And it's, as one of my residents said, it's not the big things, it's the small things that matter. And we have to have some principles around that. Now, with respect to the reserve, I actually don't know what the reserve is. I've heard 100,000, I've heard other numbers, and the reserve as of 2022, according to the financial statements that you had, was, give me a moment, $134,054. Now, I was interested in Mr. McRoberts saying that we would, if we were defunded, that you could be gone in a year. Well, the truth of that is that you'll continue to do the work that you do. You'll do the fine work that you do. And I want to congratulate you for going through you try to put money away for a rainy day, but you had a hurricane and you came through that really well, as your financial statements noted. So you're completely resilient. And I have no doubt that next year, if $31,000 is taken from you from the taxpayers, that you won't be able to fill that void and be sustainable. And I think you should be very proud about that. So we're not defunding the Sport Hall of Fame. Really, what is being proposed is that you're taking the operating expense of $31,000. And if you take a look at the operating reserves from last year, and I don't know because you haven't provided financial statements for this year, what that is, maybe you have more money or maybe you have less. Your financial statement said that you have a zero deficit in 2023, which is this year. So your financial statements will come out and we will see that there's going to be no increase or decrease in that reserve. So I just think it's fiscally responsible to simply say to an organization that if you have 3 or 4 times what your deficit is in any one year, that maybe you don't need to be funded again. And I think you'd be quite wise to come back and ask for a community grant if you felt that there was any jeopardy in what was going on. So I thank Councillor Gaertner for bringing this forward and bringing the issue forward because I think it's worth the discussion to have that conversation, but I'd still like to hear from others around the table as to what they think about this particular issue. So again, the Sports Hall of Fame, far be it from me to say anything negative about what has been done in the past. But what this is really talking about trying to be responsible and sustainable. And our job here is not about just the Sports Hall of Fame. Our job here is about protecting taxpayer dollars. So I'll yield the floor to someone else.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. And for the record, I think the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame is a valuable public showcase and a testament to sport in this community. And I appreciate all the work that the volunteers and those who have been great ambassadors and inductees for the hall have done in the past. Just to address some of the comments we heard tonight. So we've heard a number of the delegates come up and talk about the fact that for any charitable organization, it's prudent to have reserves. I mean, certainly that is a well-established accounting fact. You can go online yourself and just Google it. I pulled up Grant Thornton, which talks about any organization that has a long-term purpose. Best practice is to establish an operating reserve to cover the operating costs of the organization should an unexpected funding shortfall occur, and consider this reserve as your insurance to ensure the long-term continuity of your operations. So they are following best practice, as was established in the infancy of the hall, through deliberations, through conversations with members of council, and year after year, we've supported that principle that it's okay for them to have reserves because we've continued to move forward in our relationship with them. I also do note that if you look back at the history, every time that the hall has come before us, either for capital projects or for ongoing operating expenses, time and time, staff, members of council have talked about the relationship we have and the value that the hall has provided to the community as a whole, to both sport tourism, and to those members who, are in the SARC, get a chance to see the legacy of all the athletes, the builders, everyone, the contributors to sport in this community. And it's interesting too, because I have so many different reports, I was able to pull up a delegation from years ago and I'll share with you some of the words where they talks about, as a volunteer-driven organization, the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame represents an important historical celebration of sport for all members of Aurora community and beyond. At the time, they were asking the town become a funding partner providing base financing that permits us to sustain our activity and grow according to our approved strategic plan. Our partnership proposal represents fair and mutual benefits to both parties in a trusting business relationship. Those were the words of then President Ron Weese as he came before asking for the development of the hall to be relocated at the SARC to fund the capital project and to maintain the long-standing business relationship. And it's 2 pages full of, positive information with respect to how the hall has worked closely with the town to elevate sport in this community. And so I go back to those words. It's a trusting business relationship. As far as I know, the hall probably has bylaws that talk about what happens in insolvency or if it should cease operations. My guess would be that there is probably some mechanism in there so that some of that reserves would come back to the town. But that couldn't be followed up, and we can talk about it. I see their solicitor nodding his head, so I'm sure, and that would also be standard practice for most of those organizations that we deal with. So in some ways, they preserve the money that the town gives them as a long-term legacy and protects the town's investment in them. I also want to speak to the issue of treating all entities equally. There are a few organizations that we deal with on a regular basis that have a surplus, and we haven't made that request of them. We haven't made it of the cultural center. We haven't made it of the senior center, and they have surpluses. But if town council wants to go down that road, then let's create that policy. Let's create those principles and make sure that we treat everybody equally with respect to that. What's the point of order?
Point of order.
What's the
What's
point
the
of order?
point of order? Procedurally, what's the point of order?
What's the point of order on my
what's-
comments?
My point of order was that you're bringing in other cultural center, the senior center, and other organizations. And this is about the Sports Hall of Fame.
Hold on.
This is
Counselor,
about-
that's not a point of order. Point of order is due to
Stick to the-
procedural inconsistencies.
Let's stick
There's
to
nothing
what's on.
procedurally wrong.
Let's
My
stick to
vote,
the item on
I'm
hand.
ruling there is no point of order.
Of course you
Counselor?
are. Of course you are.
Of course I am.
The comment was, and I think it's a fair comment, to say that we should treat all organizations equally. So I'm saying that if the council as a whole wants to create a policy with respect to surpluses to organizations that we fund, then great. Let's have that conversation. Let's create that principle, that policy, and then have all organization adhere to it. We're doing this as a one-off, and I have a problem with doing it as a one-off. I do have a problem with it that we haven't said this to an organization well in advance, say, council is looking to establish a policy, because that's what council does. Council makes policy, and we ask organizations and staff to implement those policies. We do not have a policy with respect to this. And so for a variety of reasons, I'm opposed to this motion.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Weese, second time.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to bring up a point about, I do a number of grants, and recently many of these granting agencies, and I'm considering us being one of them right now, but not exactly the same as the OTF. But the OTF won't even look at a grant application if you have more than 1 year of your operating reserve. And I think that's the basis of this motion. It has nothing to do with the value of the Sport Hall of Fame. Nobody in this table or nobody in this hall would want to see anything happen to the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame. We're not trying to do complete defunding. We're just simply talking around here about the operating reserve. And so that's the end of the story for me, at least. And I'm interested in hearing what others will have to say. We haven't had everybody have a weigh in here. But the Hall of Fame is, I mean, I know more than anyone the value of it and the value of volunteerism and the work that's been done by everybody in this room. And I'm sorry it's gotten to the point where we now think that we don't value the Hall of Fame, because we absolutely value the Hall of Fame and we want it to continue to be the success that it is. This is just a matter of a budgeting item having to do with taxpayer dollars. So I'm interested in hearing someone tell me why the operating deficit of $135,000 is sufficient or is the right number. I don't think it is. I think they could use some of those funds to bring it down. And when they choose to come back for a community grant or ask for funding again, nobody in this room would want any kind of failure for the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame.
Thank you, Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Ms. McDougall. I just kind of wanted to have some clarification on some of the existing funding that we do for the Sports Hall of Fame and how the town supports them now without this funding. Could you just brief us on that, please?
Ms. McDougall.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Currently, the town supports them with a approximately $20,000 operating amount that we've allocated within our museum budget, museum and archives budget. Of that, of the 20,000, we typically assess it every year, but approximately 10,000 of it is in staff time, allocating of our staff time, and the other 10 being for supplies and materials used to actually prepare the induction document or the plaques, the other materials and the research that we utilize. So it's a $20,000 investment from within our museum and archives operating budget.
Councillor.
Thank you. And I completely support that. Love that we continue doing that. Also, if you wouldn't mind just clarifying, the town doesn't charge the Sports Hall of Fame any fees for the space or any maintenance or cleaning of the space at all, do they?
Ms. McDougall.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, we do not.
Councillor.
Thank you. And just clarity on a little bit of the history, because I know it was a little bit before my time, but I did notice there was a closed capital project of $77,000 for the Sports Hall of Fame. And I was wondering if you could maybe kind of touch on what that meant.
Ms. McDougall.
The closed capital project in this binder relates to a $77,000 total. 55,000 was brought on approximately around 2015 for, I believe at that time was potentially for the move. This was before my time, but it was for the move over to the SARC. The other 26,000 came in around 2018 to enhance the marketing and naming and promotions within the SARC that supported additional information or marquee and wayfinding signage within the SARC itself to ensure that the patrons that arrive in the building know where to go and how to find the hall within the SARC itself.
Council.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I do feel that does shed a light on a lot of the support that the town has done for the Sports Hall of Fame. I appreciate everybody coming and speaking here tonight. And I've always been a great supporter of the Sports Hall of Fame and love everything about it. I've been to pretty much every Sports Hall of Fame event since I've been on council, and it's always been such a great time. And especially this year, I thought there was such a huge success, tons of sponsors. I was actually shocked in all the sponsors that the Sports Hall of Fame had, and also the golf tournament being so successful as it was. So it really means that you guys are really successful. And I think that's what this is about. Looking at this motion on the floor, and I understand where Councillor Gaertner is coming from, and I understand where everybody's emotions are coming from. I'm trying to look at this objectively as a budget item, and looking at the operational cost. I'm just trying to understand with the 30,000 through Mr. Chair to Ms. McDougall, is this specifically supposed to be allocated to any outstanding operation cost over and above this plus education? Is that the intent of this?
Ms. McDougall.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, from the summary of their budget and looking at the allocation of funds within their budget, much like many of the other organizations, it is their net balance and looking for the grant support, much like ACC has at the bottom of theirs. They're looking for a net support, predominantly looking at their expenditures. And in the information I understand from the board, it is focused around their marketing, their promotions, their educational programs, and administrative supports.
Councillor.
Thank you. So more operationally and essentially these funds, from my understanding and conversations I've had offline in the past with Mr. Khan, is that the organization itself does the fundraising and sponsorship opportunities to help fund the celebration, the actual dinner and the parties and everything else. So I don't even want to even entertain having that conversation of not funding that initiative, because I don't think that's what we're talking about. And I believe that everything you guys are doing is fantastic. I would suggest, as this is something that I've seen over the years become very, very successful, and we have done a lot of investment, that perhaps maybe the best approach to see how this kind of translate is to do more of a step process and say, okay, well, maybe at this time, we do a 75, 50, 25, see how that works. This is something, it's a 3-year outlook. maybe next year you do fine at the 75. Maybe the following year you're like, no, we want that 75, or, you know, come back and kind of have that assessment. But I think this is an idea, is to be able to be self-sufficient. From what I hear from Councillor Gaertner, and also Councillor Weese has been on the board and understands a little of the history and how the operating has changed a lot significantly in the last, I don't know, I guess 8 years or so from when it started and what the costs were. And I think that might be a nice step approach. So it was my choice. You know, I think that, you know, perhaps maybe more of a step process would be something to pilot and see how that works. And, you know, granted, you know, the success of what you guys have done this year has been fantastic. Haven't seen that much fundraising and many sponsors, big sponsors that you guys have had, more so than any other organization. So that, I think that speaks volumes. You should be proud of that. So that would be my suggestion. And, you know, hopefully everybody in the audience, as well as some of the council members, will see that that's maybe a nice compromise to kind of see if that's something that will work. Objectively, we're trying to achieve the same thing, but at the same time, looking at it as principal and budget item.
You, Councillor Gaertner, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Ms. McDougall. Is the Sports Hall of Fame set up insured under our town umbrella? They're at the SARC.
McDougall.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, they carry their own insurance. But certainly being an occupier of our, much like a permit holder in our building, if something were to happen, the town may be liable. I'd look over to our solicitor for verification of that, but they carry their own insurance on all the archives that are in at the center as well.
Councillor.
Thank you, but the should there be some damage to the building or their display there, would that be covered by the town? Oh, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor.
Sarah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I would say not exactly, because I think they have an agreement with us. And in the agreement, I'm sure that we have put some insurance clauses where anything damaging to their property would be their own. But if it is any damage to the SARC, or if that's where it's in, sorry, then that would be then on the town's insurance policy.
Councillor.
Thank you. And I'm glad that these things are fully insured, I hope. I have to go back to the cultural center. The cultural center has that amount, $100,000, and I don't know what the actual number is because we don't have the audited financial statements. Maybe when we have those, I think they were asked for last year. When we have those, then maybe we can have a clearer picture. But to me, this is a lot of money for this group to be carrying as a reserve fund. And last week, I believe it was said that there was no specific purpose for that reserve fund. It was just there. Yeah, you have to have a reserve fund. We should all have reserve funds, personally and business wise. This is a large reserve fund. And I really think that your success has proved that you don't need this core funding from the town. Again, no disrespect. I agree. And please don't shake your head. I have nothing but praise for what's been accomplished here. But, you know, I'm also wearing the taxpayer's hat. So I think my motion is in order. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gallo, first time.
Thank you. I guess first off, obviously, everyone around here, everyone in this room is supportive of the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame. I haven't heard anything to the contrary. It's a tough one for me. I'm extremely supportive of the Sports Hall of Fame, and I listen to my colleagues. I look at budgets and trying to figure out what path to take regarding this. Through you, Mr. Mayor, does the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame have any full-time staff?
Mr. McDougall.
Through Mr. Mayor, no, they don't.
So
Councillor?
all of their expenses through regarding administration and management and all of that is done through I guess contracts.
Ms. McDougall?
Through Mr. Mayor, I'm predominantly volunteer. But otherwise, yes, they hire a contract staff to support their actual induction ceremony, which would be funded through ticket sales and sponsors under a separate entity. Otherwise, they would be all volunteer that are on the board. So from an administrative costing perspective, they don't have staff.
Councillor?
Well, their 2022 financial statements, there's almost $37,000 in administration, management, and web and communications. 20,000 for admin and management, and almost 17,000 for web and communications. So there must be some contracting in administration and management. The only reason I say that is because while I didn't want to get into this whole reserve fund issue, typically, at least in my experience, and certainly in my experience at the cultural center, the entire reserve fund at the cultural center is directly related to, if the organization was to close, was to be able to pay the employees and not incur any issues with the release of those employees. I believe it's something like 130,000. I could be wrong, and it may have increased since I was on the board, but that is the intent of the cultural center's reserve fund. That's not to say that I don't agree with organizations like this having a reserve fund. That's not to say that I know or don't know whether, at least from the financial statements, 130,000 is adequate or not adequate. I can only judge from my experience on other organizations. And this is very healthy. I don't think anybody would deny that this is a very healthy reserve fund, and a large part due to their success. I did hear one person say that the induction ceremony pays for itself. The 2022 financial statements doesn't necessarily show that. The cost or the revenue from the induction ceremony was 26,500, and the expenses for the induction ceremony was almost $40,000. I suspect some of going forward, that's 2022, may be very different in 2023. I'm just going by what the financial statements say.
Sorry. Go ahead, Councillor.
This is, I don't want to see this, and I don't necessarily see this motion before us saying that we're killing the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame. Is there a compromise in here that there's some kind of a middle ground? I wish I would have had a little more time to reflect on this and dig a little deeper on their finances and how all of those things play out. But I'm open to any suggestions that deviate from this. For the time being, I still want to hear some other comments.
Thank you, Councillor Kim, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think everyone who's in favor of this amendment has said they have great amount of respect and adoration for the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame. And I find that very distressing when essentially you're challenging the integrity of those who run the hall, as well as the financial integrity of those who manage the funds. Essentially, you want to take the funding away. It's like,
What's the point of order, Councillor?
Nobody's challenging the integrity of an organization by questioning the funding.
So
That's completely unfair.
Councillor, it's not a point of order. There's nothing
Point of
procedurally
personal
wrong.
privilege.
Thank you. Councillor, I'd ask you to change your words, in your opinion.
it's like saying you support Aurora Town Square, yet you don't want to fund it and do everything to undermine it. Is there another point of order here?
What?
We talk about these gotcha moments in council. We encourage council members to speak to staff before council meetings, to ask questions, get a greater grasp of the concepts, numbers, and so on. And if a councilor had any critical questions, they'd be discussed in advance out of respect for staff. Now, I get the impression that the Hall members, this was not something that they knew in advance. So I'd like to ask Councillor Gaertner whether if she had that much respect for the Hall, did you approach the Hall about this? That you can work together on a solution instead of having to discuss this as an amendment in a budget meeting?
Councillor Gaertner?
From the presentation last week, I believe it was, and my concern about the size of the reserve fund, especially in compared to the cultural center, and also all the reports of success and sponsorship success as well. This group has done an incredible job. I really don't think they need the taxpayers' funding to carry on a successful, very successful organization. And that's where this came from.
Councillor Kim?
Thank you. And, as Councillor Thompson astutely mentioned earlier, we don't want to do this as a one-off. And I would prefer to not approve this, and I hope that the others would agree to not go ahead with this, and maybe discuss in this next year what we can do about what's called excessive reserves for all organizations. Let's find that number and put in an equal playing surface for all town organizations. That's what I would recommend. That's all. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson, second time.
Thank you. As previously mentioned, personally, I support the concept of organizations having a reserve. I think it's a sound financial planning principle, and it's fiscally responsible to do so. Where I would have an issue, if we had an organization that year over year was showing that they had an operating surplus of a significant amount, I think that's when you sort of take a look at the funding provided and see whether or not you can make changes.
Councillors,
Would you like me to, can I wait? Let me know when you're finished.
Councillor Thompson, go ahead.
Thank you. If an organization has an operating surplus year over year of some significance, that's when you take a look at it and ask the questions of whether or not they're still reliant upon funding from various sources to be fiscally sound. You look at their financial statements. From my read, and I'm not part of the organization, but their surplus is $100,000. I know that it says 134 on the asset sheet, but it also says they have $28,000 worth of payables to go along with that, which in my eyes would reduce it. And if you look at their expenditures year over year, it was 91,000 last year. So they have 1 year operating. But what I look at is their year over year. Are they operating at a surplus or a deficit? Last year, their surplus, according to their 2022 statements, was only $2,900. I'm not going to ask the organization to operate in a deficit. We don't operate in a deficit. We don't think that's a sound principle. I would not ask any of the organizations that we work with to operate in a deficit. If their revenues increase to a point where they're showing a healthy surplus every year and they're growing that surplus significantly, yes, I think that's a reasonable time to be talking to the organization and say, okay, you're becoming more and more self-sufficient. You no longer need to rely upon the town's dollars to be able to achieve sustainability. And that's where we talk about reducing it. We've done it in the past with other organizations as they've been able to grow as well. But I think there's a recognition that we're always going to support them to some degree. So I think, for those reasons and the others, again, I would say that, if we want to look at developing some sort of policy, so be it, but I'm not in support of this motion.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gaertner, you want to change the motion?
The change would be that this funding be approved dependent upon the audited financial statements. It's a conditional approval until we receive those audited financial statements.
Depending on what, Councillor?
I beg your pardon?
Depending on what?
Well, we don't really know. We do ask for
Miss-
audited
I'm just gonna
financial
go to this.
statements from other organizations, and the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame should be no different. It was asked for last year. So let's just have the financial statements.
I'm just gonna, Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just like to clarify that the financial statements are unaudited. They do not perform an actual audit. If that was required, that would add to the costs for the organization to do an audit similar to some of the other ones. I believe between about $3,000 to $6,000 at least.
Councillor.
Well, perhaps somebody else has an idea at the table, because I think this group is very successful and does not need the taxpayer support. That's my bottom line. If somebody wants to put forward another motion, that's fine.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gilliland, second time.
Thank you. It's unfortunate. It's gotten very emotional around the table, and I really I'm saddened to think that people around the table are made to feel they don't appreciate the Sports Hall of Fame. It is definitely not the sentiment or the tone of, I think, where Councillor Gaertner is coming from this motion. And I think we all recognize that we do support the Sports Hall of Fame, every single one of us around the table. And I really don't appreciate some of the comments I've heard that are directed at other members and making comparisons with other organizations or other projects. This is not the same thing. And we were just talking about one specific organization and the dollars that we're talking about. We're talking about budget, dollars and cents. And it's not easy being in a position here, having to emotionally detract or detach from the organization itself and actually looking at the budget and the principle of where those dollars and cents come from, especially when we're talking about the taxpayers. Again, I would like to see a happy medium here. I'd like to be able to meet in the middle. I still like the idea of, let's do it, a step process and see how that goes. I know the last time I had asked for that and was assured that, there would be plenty of extra fundraising with the golf tournament and how successful it would be. And it proved to be that successful. And I don't see why, if an organization is being extremely successful, why that would mean that we would continue asking for the exact same funds. Because I think the funds are really there to help you get off your feet and move forward. My amendment would be, or my suggestion would be, is to propose a 75, 50, 25 proposal and go from there. And if next year that's something you find that doesn't work, then you could definitely come back and ask for more next year. It's not like it's set in stone each year. This is an outlook for the next 3 years, but that would be the amendment I put on the floor, is proposing that the grant be reduced to a 75, 50, 25% for this budget.
Point of order.
Motion on the floor. It substantially changes it.
Mr. Clark.
To you, Mr. Mayor, I believe council can amend the total on the screen. So if let's say you wanted maybe just for something that might be in order for this year would be a 75% of the total ask for 2024, and then we deal with subsequent years when the budget comes back to be reviewed for 25 and 26.
Councillor.
Everybody else's, because at the end of the day, we're still going to come back and we're going to review again.
Is there a seconder to that amendment?
Wendy?
Seeing none. Oh, Councillor Weese? To the amendment?
Yes.
Yep, to the, I'm asking if there's any speakers to the amendment. Councillor Weese, to the amendment?
Yeah, I want to thank both councillors Gaertner and Gallo. Sorry. Thank both for the attempt at a compromise here, because I believe that's probably where it should land. Maybe reducing all of it is too much, but serving some notice that we're hoping that they will eventually become self-sustaining and inside of 3 years. So I think that's a reasonable thing to ask as a compromise here.
Any other comments to the amendment? Yeah, well, I'm going to get it on the screen, but.
But you have to approve that.
Oh. So it's 20 plus 23, 795. Any other comments to the amendment? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. So just to be clear, this amendment on the floor reduces the support that the town gives it by $5,000 or $6,000. Through you to Mrs. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Or Mrs. McDougall. What's the total amount we normally provided was 49.9?
The total, Councillor, the total amount is 31,725, I believe.
Plus the 20?
Plus the 20, which would be 51,725.
So it's an $8,000 reduction.
Yes.
Thank you.
Roughly, yes. Correct, Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel? I just make sure, get you to nod, say yes.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to clarify, what is the starting point for this? Are we looking at the amount that's in the 24 budget or the amount, starting point is 23 budget?
The amount that's in the 24 budget.
Yeah. So the amount up there would be the correct amount. And that would be.
But what's the reduction, I think, is what the councillor's asking. We're saying roughly around 8.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, $7,931.25.
Councillor, $7,931.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions to the amendment? Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. I just, hopefully, so it's just clear for everybody that includes the $20,000 of curation of the staff and the setup and supplies and the marketing thereof. Through you, Mr. Chair and Ms. McDougall, I just want to make, if you can just clarify that also includes that. That's not on top of, we're not giving, that's not the amount on top of the 20.
Ms. McDougall.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. And for clarity, I would ask just to note that the $20,000 would remain and that the difference being 23,793 is the grant versus their 31,725. Okay.
Councillor.
Thank you. And just for clarity, if it was through Mr. Chair to Mr. Clerk, since this is being presented for 2024, I would expect then for 2025 and 2026, it would be a brand new ask. Is that correct, Mr. Clerk? Since, I mean, I was being presented as a 3-year, but are we just presenting this as a 1 year and then coming back? Is that something that we should be saying for 2024? Wording that needed? I don't know.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the ask for 2025 and 2026 would not be affected by this motion.
Councillor.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Clerk. So by you saying that, does that mean that it would go back up to the original ask of 31, whatever the COLA was on top of that?
Councillor, I can answer that. I mean, as it's the mayor's budget and we'll be moving forward, it would be whatever, I guess the mayor would deem to be the appropriate number being implemented into the budget.
Okay, so I guess it's kind of moot to talk about 2025 and 2026 at this point. And so all we're dealing with right now is 2024, Mr. Clerk. Is that the only thing that's in our purview right now?
That's correct.
Okay.
Any other comments to the amendment? Speak back to the main motion, but I'll just say I oppose the amendment. Call the vote. Okay. So, Councillor Kemp. It's not coming through. Just hit the red tab up at the top. It should pop back up again. Try it again. Did it go through, Linda? No? Just you want to tell me your answer? Councillor Kim's a no. That carries 4-3. Back to the main motion as amended. Any speakers to the main motion? Yeah, no, so you can have, yeah, so we'll wait for you, but we're back to the main motion as amended. Councillor Gallo, you have a second time you'd like? Go ahead.
Just for a little bit of clarity, and Councillor Thompson is correct. The 2022 surplus does say 29,000. I don't know what 2020 is. I was trying to quickly find it. I'm sure it was presented in the past, but the 2021 in the financial statements, which he did not mention, was nearly 13,000, which would have added to the surplus. I don't know what the previous years are. It's probably good to know whether they're similar. 2021 probably was higher because not a lot of activity was possible. But it would be good to compare 2020, 2019 to see what their surpluses were.
Thank you. So before I call the vote, I don't know. Listening to this, I think this sets a bit of a precedent as we move forward. We're essentially telling organizations, if you're successful and being fiscally responsible, town's not going to help you. You know, and when I look at this, I agree. All of us said that we think the value for the Hall of Fame is tremendous to our community. What they do, what they support, what the value that they bring to our residents. You know, sometimes we also have to look at that return on investment. And I think that when we look at the return on investment, we try to put a number to it. I don't think you can. What is brought back to our community? We've heard that other communities talk about our community, talk about our Hall of Fame, talk about what's being done in the town of Aurora. That return on investment, I don't think it can be measured in dollars and cents. I think if you tried to, we'd be talking in the millions of what comes back to our community. So, you know, quite frankly, I wasn't going to go too much to this other than to say the fact that I strongly oppose to this. But even making this adjustment, I heard around the table, this was about, taxpayer dollars and looking from a budget perspective. And now all we've done is just reduce it by $8,000. Why? Why? When we're talking, I heard, well, we need to reduce it by 31 because they have such a big thing, but now we're okay to reduce it just 8,000. So I'm strongly opposed to this. I'll be voting against it, and I'll use whatever tool is afforded to the mayor's office. That's fine. So I'll call the vote. Is there something funny, Councillor Gaertner? Okay. Councillor Kim? Still not. Do you want to just tell me again? Councillor Kim's a no. Carries 4-3. We'll move to 7.1. Councillor Weese, your amendment, sport plan update. Would you like to move as is? Seconder? Councillor Gaertner, go ahead, Councillor Weese.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In discussion with numerous residents, I've learned a couple of items seem to be concerns for taxpayers, and one of these is the amount of money are paid to consultants to provide input to our departments. Our staff are knowledgeable, they're skilled people, and there's belief that much of this consultation could be eliminated because of those skills and expertise they have. Consultants, however, are valuable if used properly and to complement the work of our staff and provide a measure of objectivity. Under tab 8 in the 2024 budget and capital plan, we see an item called the sport plan update. The total amount of all the studies included in this budget for 2024 is $661,000. And I asked that since the sport plan is funded out of our tax funded reserve, this $40,000 expense will be reconsidered by you, Mr. Mayor, as it's your budget. I've noticed that the sport plan has been successfully and partially implemented since 2016. And we've received regular positive reports of the progress. It's true that we've gone through a pandemic that forced local sport organizations to pivot successfully, and they may be ready to explore those items related to the sport plan and update. We also know that diversity, equity, and inclusion processes are relevant to our community, and those exist in the sport plan, but they're not yet complete. Likewise, the sport funding model to help sport with sustainability has not been prepared nor implemented. Therefore, there's still a lot to do to meet the objectives of the existing sport plan and a lot yet to learn prior to an update. I actually haven't found any evidence that the sport plan is out of date through discussions with other sport organizations. And in fact, many are unaware of the plan itself. And so I suggest that this item could be deferred to a future budget after the need has been verified through public consultation, including local sport organizations. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Weese. That was some interesting points that you made there. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Ms. McDougall. Is this sport plan something that can wait?
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the challenge we have with it waiting is it was done in 2015, so it is already 8 years old. Definitely has recommendations in it that will be longstanding, that will be in perpetuity, focuses that we will want to focus on for years to come. However, a lot has happened since 2015, and our concern with not addressing those and looking for updates. Yes, pandemic was one, absolutely. Other social issues amongst the community have really become prevalent. And it is important for us to be responsive to those and enhance our sport plan with some of those current issues that are in our community today. So as far as a wait goes, it just means we're that further away from addressing some of those more prominent things that are happening in our community today. that would enhance the sport plan as it exists and its recommendations. Another year or two, and in fact, the way the motion reads, we wouldn't be seeing it till 27. So it adds 3 more years. Wouldn't be for 11 years for us to update this plan. As staff, we feel we're missing the boat on making sure that the plan focuses on what those are. And I will say that the focus of adding this in now is that we have heard from our LSOs, through our workshops, through the mayor's roundtable, areas of concern for them where they do not have the resources and or the support or the knowledge of how to address some of these concerns. And some of that is certainly societal. Diversity is definitely one. Equity is obviously a major focal point. The pandemic definitely raised the ability even to change in communication methods for the organization. So there's a variety out there regarding even safe sport that seems to be more prevalent than it was in 2015. So to us as staff, we always turn to our plans and point to the plans when we're dealing with and looking to add or work on initiatives so that it shows that we're supporting council's direction. Without that, some of that information that we believe are priorities now, what we've heard in the society, we don't have something to point to. They may be perceived as staff opinion. And for us as staff, we'd prefer to point to a plan that gives us that guidance. So delaying to us is a concern when it's already 8 years old.
Councillor.
Thank you. Okay, I never didn't look at it as like 3 years. I would like to suggest that, if it's something that we decided to wait until whether it's next year or the year after, through Mr. Sherrod and Ms. McDougall, if you could just clarify again how much the sport plan would cost us now to do it. If you could just give me an idea, just remind me of the line item, just what you have proposed.
Ms. McDougall.
Through Mr. Mayor, it's a $40,000 update, not a full plan. It's just meant to be an update.
Councillor.
Thank you. And so my only comment is, I don't necessarily have a challenge if we were to pause and get some public consultation. I'd say remove from the 2024 budget and, whenever that from what I understood from a future budget, I think is what Councillor Weese had said in his open remarks, could have meant any future budget, not necessarily 2025 or 26. I just wanted to ask through Mr. Chair to Councillor Weese, seeing as you are, heavily involved with many sporting organizations within Aurora, in your opinion, this public consultation, is this something that you would consider to be a valuable piece before moving forward?
Councillor Weese.
Absolutely. And I think that the consultation can be done very simply through the staff that are quite capable of meeting with people and going through the facilitation of the sport plan, what has been done, what is left to be done, what's a priority. And if there's some items there that they do not think are a priority, see perhaps diversity, equity, inclusion, and working with newcomers and women and girls is an important social issue. Many of the sport organizations were simply trying to keep the lights on during the pandemic. And so I don't think a lot of that was really internalized by them. And it's important that it's done because they just had bigger fish to fry at that time. So I think it'd be better to go back to have a consultation with them as we did when the original sport plan was put together and get the advice from them. And I think you get a lot more buy-in. It's just it's a better process than just spending $40,000 on it. And I said in my opening remarks that there's a bit of concern in the public about the use of consultation dollars. And I think this is just the only one that I felt that I could take a look at and see that there may be an opportunity to defer this to next year's budget. I don't think it has to be 3 years at all. I think we could get the work done very quickly. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor.
Thank you. And that was going to be my next question. If Councillor Weese, the intention was to wait 3 years, I was going to ask you if it was okay to something maybe revisit in 2025. And from what I hear, what you said, that was your intention. So through Mr. Chair and Ms. McDougall, do you think that we could maybe pause this until maybe this is conditional or wait till 2025, maybe do a little bit more public consultation before we go ahead and spend this extra $40,000. Is that something that you could see that would be okay to wait?
Dougal?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I do want to clarify the consultation phase. Much like even our Parks Recreation Master Plan, it contains consultation. That is part of the process that's involved. And through that, it provides us guidance as to the priorities and trends that are in the community. That is how we perceive this plan would take form. It would be with consultation with our organizations and having them help steer us through prioritization within the community. So to do a pre-consultation before we follow with a regular consultation, to us, we were trying to expedite the plan, knowing that we were going to be consulting with the user groups to help us with those prioritizations, similar to the Parks Recreation Master Plan. So again, deferring it just delays a little bit of that prioritization for us, and knowing that where we believe the world is going, where our sport world is going, we want something to point to. Our preference would be not to delay. If I have a
Councillor?
Thank you. Appreciate that. I'm respecting what Councillor Weese is saying, at least to, hold off on the 40,000, trying to find, we have a lot of consultation asks for this year. And, I think it's prudent of us to at least know when we can put a pause for an extra year, just to kind of take an inside look. I got the impression that some organizations feel they weren't consulted at all as far as, where they felt where it was in the situation. And I would hope that at least maybe we could internally utilize our own staff to do that up front. Maybe it won't cost as much. And that's kind of where I am today. I'll listen to maybe what other councillors are going to say or chime in around the table, but I'm not really saying that we're not going to do it. It's just, I just want to see that extra little step and kind of respect that a little bit. That's all. But I do appreciate everything that we're all trying to achieve together. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. I support the sport plan refresh. I supported it when staff stood before us in June and gave us a report card about what had been accomplished, what still needs to be accomplished, what some of the gaps are that have changed since the implementation and drafting of the first sport plan. And they were clear when they stood before us a few months ago and said that there was a need to refresh the plan and address these issues. And I believe council unanimously supported that in June. I'm not sure what's changed since then. Perhaps there has been further dialogue, but it was clear in the report and staff made clear to us that there are been some notable changes, and it would be helpful to organizations across the community for us to refresh this plan and address some of these gaps. And feel free to look back at the June report to refresh your own memories, but I'm supportive of the staff initiative.
Thank you. Councillor Gaertner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Ms. McDougall. Ms. McDougall, I imagine that all other municipalities are facing this same challenge, and maybe we can learn something from what they're doing.
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly that is a standard practice that we do. We obviously look to our neighbors and see what they're doing, but they're not necessarily the experts in what we need to achieve. If from a safe sport perspective, for example, we need to be consulting with the right people to ensure they're providing us the right guidance. Same with diversity and equity and inclusion as it relates to sport, looking for somebody that can guide us as it relates to sport. So certainly we can look at other plans and see where they're headed with it, but we need something that suits and fits our Aurora mold and obviously is guided by the right experts.
Councillor?
To you, Mr. Mayor, has the City of Toronto updated its plan, or Markham?
Ms. McDougall?
Through Mr. Mayor, I'm not certain about the timing of their plans, so I'd have to look into that for you.
Councillor?
Thank you. I understand where Councillor Weese is coming from. I'd like to kind of maybe save a little money and learn from what some of the other municipalities are doing, that the larger municipalities that possibly have more diversity than us and more newcomers, etc. Thank you.
Anybody else for the first time? Councillor Weese, second time?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. the comments around about the larger centers, back in 2015, when we decided we were going to consider a sport plan, I think it was Councillor Thompson that said, let's get this sport plan done. And then in 16, it was actually published in January the 1st. So some of those dates were a little off. They're not significant. My sport planning may lead to other things, as Ms. McDougall has identified. So, for example, we've talked about the diversity, equity, and inclusion expert to come in, and they're not cheap, but they're absolutely essential if you're going to do it right, because it's full of problems. So, I think this is a good thing to do, and maybe it is the right thing to do. I think it should be done now, not done later. But I'd like to hear what others think about this in terms of what they're voting. And at the end of the day, I mean, we are all trying to be current. We're trying to be contemporary with our sport planning, and we're way ahead of the game for all other typical municipal organizations of our size. And we should be proud of the sport plan work that's already been done. I just want to make sure that we're going in the right direction without having to spend money if we don't need to. Thanks.
You, any other comments or questions? Councillor Gilliland, second time.
Thank you. I'm just trying to wrap my head around those comments. To you, Mr. Chair, I guess maybe to Councillor Weese, if you can clarify, were you saying, did you suggest that you were okay not moving forward right now or moving forward? I was confused on those comments that you made, unless you were just asking for other input around the table. Because it sounded like it's something you'd want to do, but then at the same time you want to be fiscal with your with the consultation price, but also understanding and respecting at some point it needs to be done. So are you asking this to be conditional upon some consultation with organizations before moving forward, and perhaps that's in 2025? So if you could just kind of clarify what you meant by those comments, it would kind of help me understand where we should go from here.
Councillor Weese.
Sure, thank you. I don't think at this moment we need to be spending $40,000 on a sport plan. I'd like to make sure that we have all the data from all the stakeholders for the sport plan, meaning that they are indeed ready to move forward before we spend money on a consultant. I think that's prudent to do that, and our residents are expecting us to be sensible about the hiring of consultants and other experts in that regard. And it's not just the sports plan; it's for all consultants and all of them that are in the studies group. I just happened to pick this one because I know a little bit more about it, but I believe it should be done. I just don't think it needs to be done right now. It can be done in next year. So I just like to see a little bit of pre-planning done on it, so that we are sure we're going in the right direction, because I don't want to get another sport plan and find out that we've missed something.
Councillor.
Thank you. Thank you. That really clarifies things. So for what's before us today, then would it be more appropriate to say to be removed from the 2024 budget, not 24 to 2024-6? And I guess you just leave it at that. I don't know, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Clerk, would any comments need to be made to have staff do a little bit more consultation with stakeholders prior to making a sports plan? Or is it clear through the comments and just stating to be removed for 2024? I just want to ensure that we are have the right motion in front of us.
I think Councillor staff would take comments into consideration, but if you're looking right now, it's currently states to remove it from the 2024 to 2026. So unless Councillor Weese wanted to amend that, or if you wanted to put forward an amendment, that's what's in front of us right now at this point.
Okay, I don't know, Councillor Weese, if you were interested in just saying remove from the 2024 budget, and then that way Ms. McDougall could come back in 2025 after maybe some consultation with some stakeholders to make sure we're in the right direction of the sport plan. And that at least we're deferring this a little bit. I know you have some experience with I would say the majority of the sport organizations in town. Would that satisfy what I believe you're trying to achieve for the greater good of the sport community?
Councillor Weese.
My preference would the way it is, and I'm happy we're having this conversation. And at the end of the day, it has to be either approved or not approved. I feel comfortable that I'm trying to save some taxpayer dollars and trying to do it in a sensible way. So I'd like to leave it the way it is. And again, this is the mayor's budget in any event. So you can have that conversation with the Director of Community Services and decide whether this can or does or does not have to be in this sport plan or on this year. Sorry.
Sir.
Thank you. Through Mr. Chair to Mr. Clerk, regardless if this passes tonight as is, seeing as the budget process is different in 2025, we could see that come back regardless. Is that correct?
That is correct, Council.
Okay. That's all. Thanks.
Councillor Gallo, first time.
Thank you. I just need some clarity around community consultation. I heard councillors speak about the necessity of it, and I don't think anyone here is going to disagree. I've heard staff agree that it's necessary and that it will be done. I think, at least I'm trying to read between the lines, and perhaps I'm not reading correctly. I guess through you, Mr. Mayor, to staff, is it the intent that community engagement is done through the consultant and not in-house and staff?
Through
you, Mr. Mayor, it would be part of the package, much like our other programs. So in part of the contract would be led by a consultant, yes, but staff supported. But it would be a one-time consultation phase versus do a pre-consultation and then follow it with another set of consultation with the community groups, which is what I'm hearing would happen. We would do a pre, and then we'd come back and report out, and then we would go back to the sports groups again after. But noting that our goal ultimately is to find out what the sports groups want. That is part of this sport plan update. It is intended to learn what their plan, what their desires and focuses should be. We have our own opinions of certain aspects that we feel we need to focus on based on the feedbacks and interests we have. But consultation to get their guidance is part of the program that we're developing.
Councillor.
Mr. Mayor, I'm trying to figure out from staff's perspective whether it's going to be done in-house or whether the consultant will do the vast majority of it.
Ms. McDougall.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe most of it could be done in-house through this program anyway. Where we want the consultant to be is to lead the way and be the experts as they guide us. As far as doing a survey, collection of data, that kind of thing could be done in-house by staff.
Councillor.
Thank you. I guess through you to Councillor Weese, was it your intent that at least that initial phase, if I heard correctly, that it could be done within the staff resources?
Councillor Weese.
Well, the assumption of this budget item is that we need an update, and I'm not convinced we do need an update. And if the community services people can gather that information quickly and make a discerned decision about it, I have no problem with it. If an update is needed, we should do it. I'm just not sure that the need has been established quite yet.
Councillor.
Thank you. And I don't want to go back and forth, but I need to kind of get some questions answered. How would the councillors propose we determine the need for the sports plan?
Councillor Weese.
Through a stakeholder consultation. So as was mentioned here before, there is a mayor's roundtable, but there's also a sport organization that can pull those people together and have a discussion about sport planning. I'd like to see whether the sport plan that has been evaluated or has been done already, has been evaluated as being successful, and keep the good things that are in there, and then revise the things that aren't working. As I said, there's some things in the sport plan that are not done. The sustainable funding model has not been done yet. And so there are things that are still outstanding that I think if we spent the year getting those outstanding items done, then we could again take a look at what the update would be in future.
Councillor?
You believe that stuff, all of that could be done internally. Some of the things are already kind of in place, and your suggestion is that we don't necessarily need a consultant to be able to achieve that.
Councillor?
I suggest we don't need that, but I mean, the very fact that it's here suggests to me that the staff have done some work. I'm sure they don't just say, let's do an update in the sport plan because it's 6 years old. There must be some evaluation, and I have yet to see an evaluation of it outside of the reports that we see on a probably a quarterly or a half-year basis. So I just would like, before we spend money, I'd like to see the actual need that's done through consultation with people.
Councillor? Do you have any other comments or questions? They opposed? I think that staff have done that work, and I think as was mentioned, it was presented to us in the June report that came to us. Staff have worked with directly with the LSOs through the mayor's roundtable, through other opportunities to sit down with them, to have discussions with them. And as was mentioned, that plan was presented to us in June to say that we should be moving forward with an update on the plan. It's necessary, and I agree with staff. All vote. That fails. Next motion, Councillor Weese. This is yours as well. Sport tourism. Would you like to move as is? Q, seconder. Councillor Gilliland, go ahead, Councillor Weese.
My other discussion with residents uncovered another common theme, which is the hiring of personnel that has long-term financial consequences as they appear directly on the tax levy now, and they will in the future. So under tab 8, when I was reviewing it in the capital budget, the item exists on page 11 that asks for a part-time sport tourism programmer at $68,300. Notwithstanding that's a big sum for a part-time person, we've heard numerous times how the sport and community development specialist has done a remarkable job on sport tourism and done a good job in bringing and supporting sporting events to the town. And we thank her for that work. Of course, sport tourism is an important part of tourism as a subcategory, and Aurora has a strong and dynamic sport culture, and it's positioned well for success. I know that a sport tourism strategy has been prepared, but it states that no formal approach yet exists to understand the impacts of this from an economic, social, or a sustainability point of view. So I asked the mayor to defer this position to a time when adequate consultation with stakeholders and staff, the public, including the Chamber of Commerce, local sport organizations and their sponsors, and other non-Chamber of Commerce businesses, so that can be accomplished, and that other successful models are reviewed in like-sized municipalities. In any new position, providing a strong base from which to work is important. So I also believe that a successful hire in this position would benefit from a solid business plan from which to follow, and the KPIs included. So I'm asking that this position be deferred until a business plan and KPIs for the position are established so we can make it a successful hire.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, call. Oh, Councillor Thompson.
Through you to Ms. McDougall. Ms. McDougall, as typically requested these, there's usually a rationale behind it. Would you mind taking a moment to explain why you feel it's needed in the 2024 budget?
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly, with regards to this position being tabled today, we have definitely seen success in having our sport and community development specialists be part of our program. We have since that time, though, approved a sport tourism strategy. And albeit our staff has done a fantastic job bringing some tourist sporting events to our community, it will mean as well, and it already has happened, where some of the actions within the sport plan will have to be put on pause while they focus on these larger, grander events. So it's a bit of a twofold scenario for the ability to support wholeheartedly the sport plan and not do the sport tourism strategy is fine, but then, and we wouldn't need this position. If the sports tourism strategy is a focal point and we wish to implement it, we need the support. We unfortunately don't have enough for what is involved, and we're not just simply talking local tournament support, which is it's part of the role this individual would have. It's to look at those opportunities that bring the tourism through Aurora, much like the IIHF event, college baseball event, anything that's potentially going to be bringing people from outside into Aurora. It is supported in our economic development action plan to see and promote tourism here in Aurora. This position and those sporting events naturally are a reality for that. We do see those interests and the figures that come in from hotel stays and restaurant uses and so on while they're in town. And so from in interest in this position, it definitely would be developing those relationships with the local sports organizations, provincial and national, and looking at opportunities for bidding for sporting events that come to town and what the benefits are that certainly will spin off in our community. Not to mention, as a sport community, our own local sporting agencies will be part of those hostings, much like we saw with the IHF, where our Central York girls were part of helping bring that forward. So it's a win-win as far as the benefits to our community, and having somebody that can be dedicated to bringing those forward and bringing them to Aurora would be beneficial. Not to mention to our current existing staff, so they can stay focused on the implementation of the sport plan.
Thank you. Thank you. Through you, Mrs. McDougall again. Is the assumption that this position comes on January 1st?
Ms. McDougall?
Sorry, through you, Ms. Mayor, yes, it would be a full, starting January 1, but it is a part-time role.
Thank you.
Councillor?
And I gather from your comments, and if council doesn't support this and decides to put it off to a further year, it just means certain initiatives would not be able to be carried through.
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, certainly the development and support of our sport tourism strategy to its fullest would be limited as far as how we can pursue that going forward without this position.
Thank you.
Councillor Gallo?
Thank you. I just want clarity on the amount, just so that I understand. $68,300 is, through you, Mr. Mayor, is a part-time position.
Ms. McDougall?
Comparative to our other programmer positions, it is a part-time position pay rate, knowing that it is, there's also 17% benefits added on to that or included in that amount.
And
Councillor?
through you, Mr. Mayor, what's the skill set of that $68,300 part-time position?
Ms. McDougall?
They would be we would look for them to have a post-secondary education and experience in the sports and or recreational field. Typically a 2 to 3 year experience for that type of role.
Councillor?
Thank you. I just wanted clarity on that.
Councillor Gaertner?
Mr. Mayor, I was just going to inquire about the salary. So that's 136,600 for a full-time position, including benefits. I'm just doubling it. Is it a part-time position like half-time?
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the number of hours is up to 28 hours a week versus 35, which is a full-time position.
Councillor?
As I said, I'm in the wrong job. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. McDougall. Can you confirm what other municipalities within the GTA have a tourism programmer?
Ms. McDougall.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not familiar with a sport-specific tourism programmer. There may be one through the economic development. Going outside the GTA, I do believe there's potentially somebody in position rather in Whitby. And then further out again, the other way, west side of Toronto. It's not a common position though.
Councillor.
Thank you. I mean, I know that staff would not recommend a position frivolously. I'm sure that there is a need. It's just hard for me to, fathom the pros and cons or the risk rewards of the position at this time. I would like to see, something more clear evidence of the benefits of a sports tourism programmer in another municipality to see what critical dividends that it's paying over there. I mean, what's the benefit? What's the metrics for success after a year? I'm thinking about Rural Cultural Center where they hired a business development officer, and there's a clear metric for that in terms of whether this person's role can be rationalized or not. And I'm not sure how we can rationalize this position at the end of the year. And so, but it's not that I don't doubt that this role is important to the pursuit of sport tourism, and especially in light of, we just approved the sports plan for subsequent years. They almost go hand in hand. I understand. I feel more comfortable with a contract role to see how that works out, as opposed to a part-time position that is going to be on the books indefinitely until we decide otherwise. So as is, I'm not in favor at this time, but I'd be open-minded in the future. Thank you.
You, Councillor Gaertner, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not aware that part-time staff gets benefits. Is this just for this position, or has their policy changed?
Mayor Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So it's a selection of benefits. Part-time employees are now eligible for OMERS, which is a significant cost within the benefits. And then there are some other ones that are more legislated that get charged against part-time employees as well.
Councillor.
I'll resist what I want to say, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Thompson, second time.
Thank you. Actually, through to you, with respect to the new budget process, under the new rules, is it possible to do in-year budget adjustments?
I'm going to say they can come to the table. Mr. Serio, you can.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we're still trying to sort that out. The legislation is specific on some forms of in-year budgets, but it doesn't fully make sense. So we're still trying to sort out what type of in-year budgets may be made. And by
Thank you. And I'll tell you why I raised the question. It's just I agree with some of the comments around the table and concerns. It's just not clear to me about the value and moving forward with this position January 1. Now, maybe if it was July 1st, I'd be more open to it subsequent to a report coming back to us with a little bit more details. I know we used to do this in the old days for capital projects. We'd highlight it as a yellow and conditional upon a report coming forward. But, I guess that's where my thought is that at this point, I'm leaning more towards no, because I'd like to better understand the value of the position, but perhaps that could be done through staff providing some a little bit more additional information. I'm also thinking about the fact that, we're embarking on a refresh of the sports plan. We're still building out the gym on the Sark. We're doing a bunch of different initiatives, and maybe it's a little premature to bring the person on right now. There might be more value bringing them on, like I said, on July 1st. And so I'd be more apt to see a report from staff in the new year to kind of lay out a little bit more about the goals, the role, and the objectives of the position. And then should council support it, then you'd start at July 1st. That's where I stand.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none. Call the vote. That carries. Ten-minute health break, everyone. Right. 7.4, Councillor Gallo, this is your amendment. Want to move as is? Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Thompson, Councillor Gallo, floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm just going to read it out so we're clear on what we're discussing, or at least the public is. That GNF 0074 artificial rink capital project be advanced by 1 year to 2024 to be constructed for the 2024-2025 winter season and given conditional approval pending a further report in early 2024 outlining cost, a funding model, at least 2 potential locations, and operational impacts and timeline. I had no, I liked the project and I had really no real problem with it in the year that staff had put it. The reason why I'm asking to move it forward a year, and I know I'm probably stressing staff because they didn't intend to do this in 2024, but they're really good at what they do, and I'm sure they'll accomplish it. The real reason is because as I pay attention to what's going on in our community, what's going on outside of our community, what's going on in the world, more and more statistics are showing that there's depression, there's loneliness, there's people that are bored. And as every year we enter into winter and we live in Canada and it's a long, cold time for us. And if we can encourage people to come out and do either a leisurely skate, to play some hockey, or even just to go out and watch people skate around. You've probably seen these rinks around. I see them in Toronto, and they're just wonderful. And to extend the season, as we don't have the cold that we used to, these types of facilities will allow us to do that. So I hope we're supportive of this. It is in the 10-year capital plan. Again, it's pushing it forward 1 year to get it ready for the 2024-2025 season.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
I'm certainly supportive of the amendment. Very supportive of the concept of the development of the artificial rink, and I do support and like the idea of moving it forward. I just have one question through you to Mrs. Teenkamp. A lot of times we determine what capital projects we're doing based on priority and capacity. How would moving this project forward 1 year impact your capital plans and staffing's plans? Does it necessitate dropping another capital project, or can you foresee being able to, as Councillor Gallo put it, squeeze it all in there?
Ms. Steenkamp?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly we will do everything we can to endeavor to deliver on the project. I just want to caution council that it's a pretty ambitious timeline, and there's numerous things that need to be considered, and those will be brought forward in the early report in 2024. But with that, we can fit it in with our other projects, and a large portion of us will be with a consultant to do the design and deliver on the capital management of the project.
Great, thank you. We have total faith in you.
Councillor Weese?
Thank you, and I'm for this as well. I do want to thank Councillor Gallo for putting not just the cost, but a funding model in there. I've been involved in a couple of these elsewhere, and having it with a roof on it and all the other things that come along with a high quality one is not an inexpensive thing to do. But I do liken it to where we were 20 years ago when we were bringing the first artificial turf field in. There were a lot of doubts and concerns about that. And I think this would be a leadership position and a demonstration to our sport and physical activity community that we're interested in doing the things that they want and need to have done. So I really like the looks of this, and I'm happy to support it.
Any other comments, questions? Or call the vote. Councillor Gallo, thank you for bringing this forward. I'm also in favor. Call the vote. Carries. 7.5, Councillor Gilliland. It's your amendment. Would you like to move as is? You seconder? Councillor Gaertner, Councillor Gilliland, floor is yours.
Thank you. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I did speak with Ms. McDougall about this. I think it's only prudent to be able to at least put some expectations and set the rules of engagement that we do hire facility positions and the ones that are necessary at opening or adjust if we are delayed, because we obviously can't predict that. And, having discussions about the subsequent facility positions just adds a little bit more leeway, as we're not really quite sure the demand and how we're going to walk into that. And this just adds a little bit of accountability and transparency of how we're going to phase in these positions responsibly. Thank you.
Yeah, any other comments or questions? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Every year we talk about staffing, especially about whether it be phasing it in or when it's starting. And typically the question always gets asked to the CAO. And I guess I'll ask it once again. In terms of policy, when it comes to, how we deal with the bringing on of new positions, especially in a situation like this, it's, and please correct me if I'm wrong, always been sort of our process that all of it, ELT and yourself included, do this as the motion says, is that we look for the need. And if the need is not there, then we do delay it. We've done in the past and would continue to do so here. So I'm just wondering, do you not do this anyways?
CL.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the budget provides us the permissions when we can hire at the earliest. But we often end up hiring later than is budgeted in the initial stages if there's some other change of circumstance, or if we decide that it's not the best time to bring someone new on. So that is done on occasion.
Councillor.
Thank you. And whether it's through you to Mr. Nadarozny or Ms. McDougall, I mean, especially at Aurora Town Square, we've seen the proposed opening date be delayed multiple times. And even today, I don't think it's carved in stone what the date will be. And so we do anticipate that there may be further delays. Would it be fair to assume that already we would have been looking to postpone these positions if this uncertainty were to continue as we move forward into the new year?
CL.
Through you, Mr. Yeah, absolutely. If there's any further delays, then that'll push back some of our hirings. Some of the hiring we have had to do, of course, as we get into commissioning, we want people to be trained in the new facility, but the day-to-day positions that are based on when we're open, we would have some flexibility to push those back if there was a delay in the completion date.
Councillor.
So while you may already do what's speaking in this motion, do you foresee any issues by this hard date of April 1st that they cannot be hired any sooner? Through you to Mr. Nadarozny.
CL.
Through Mr. Mayor, I defer that to Ms. McDougall. I'm not certain of the one or two of them that might have planned to get sooner, but so I'll let her answer the April 1st specific question.
Ms. McDougall.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, based on the timing of the project at this point, I wouldn't want to go any later than April 1st. I would have felt more comfortable possibly being able to hire even a mid-March potentially for that commissioning concept, knowing we have a facility to take on. But April 1st at this point, based on where we see the project going, I think April 1st is a minimum start date for me to be able to hire. Yes.
Councillor.
Thank you. That's it.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gilliland, second time.
Thank you. And I just want to amicable way to ensure that we're being fiscally responsible with these positions, as we are asking for 5 new staff for Town Square directly, and that's excluding the indirect impact. And so I think it's important that we do our due diligence and make clear what our intentions are. Thanks.
Do you any other comments or questions? Or call the vote, I'll just say that I am maybe opposed to this. I think that considering that staff can make the adjustments where necessary, I think we give them the flexibility to hire if the need be, if the square is to open. at the suggested time frame that we're looking at. Last thing I think that I would hope that anyone sitting at this table would want to see is to set up the opening of the square to fail and not have the proper staffing. And so therefore I would rather give the opportunity to staff. If it is delayed, as we just heard, staff can make that call and decide to delay the hires. And I'd prefer to leave it in the hands of our expert staff. Call vote. That carries. Next, 7.6, Councillor Gilliland, this is yours as well. Would you like to move the amendment? Seconder? Councillor Gaertner, Councillor Gilliland, floor is yours.
Thank you. I didn't have any sort of prepared speech. This is just something that I wasn't really keen on, especially after understanding the $100,000 cost for the infrastructure. And after further inquiry, it would be about $22,000 to $24,000 annually per park. I also recall when the motion came, I thought there was supposed to have some sort of report coming back to council that outlined what the scope of it is and what was involved and costs and budget implications. And I don't recall receiving that. A couple other things about the Wi-Fi in the park. I truly do believe that, being in a park is a place to disconnect from Wi-Fi and the digital world and to be able to enjoy the outdoors and not necessarily have a lot of Wi-Fi electronic magnetic fields running around. We're surrounded by it everywhere we go. And many of us enjoy being in nature just to get away from that. In addition to the fact that not only does it cost a lot on the taxpayers and getting away from nature, we do provide a lot of this service at town facilities, which I'm in total support for. But this is just a place where I feel that if we are going to be providing any kind of a service, this is just something that I feel that in our parks is just not a need. And so therefore I decided that at this time, I think this should be removed from the budget.
Councillor Weese.
Thank you. Could I ask a question? I'm not sure who it's to. The $100,000 seems a bit large for this implementation. So I'm not a techie kind of guy. So I'd like to find out a little bit more about the cost of where that $100,000 is going and what it's going to be used for, so I can make a better identification of its value to us. I believe what Councillor Gilliland said, we should be able to have some places to unplug, but I really believe that Town Square needs to have some Wi-Fi there. I'm just not so sure about Town Park, and I haven't had a chance to talk to the Town Park Area Resident Ratepayers Association on it. But right now, the finances of it, I'd really appreciate some update on that. If you could, through you, Mayor, to probably Mrs.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Wainwright Van Kessel. Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the $100,000 was an estimate based on what the information that was known at the time. This is during last budget. We have to narrow down how these are actually going to be deployed. We are working on trying to reach some agreements with third parties to possibly pay for some of this actual implementation, so that's not all burned on the taxpayer. Also, some of those ongoing operating costs relate to multi-year agreements that we'd end up into for networking equipment, which would likely get rolled into the capital project at the beginning. So we do have to reevaluate those costs, especially after we know the direction, because depending on how it's deployed, whether it's a cellular service, a network service, or a fiber service, can have a huge impact on how much the overall cost is for on a capital basis or versus an operating basis.
Councillor.
So if I heard you correctly, you don't really know, but you're giving a placeholder of $100,000 in order to cover the worst case scenario. But we're not sure what we're actually buying quite yet in terms of the cost. Have we had some quotations on this kind of thing, or is it just a discussion you've had with some of the providers? I'm just not comfortable with it quite yet. So if you can add something to that through you, Mayor.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So there are some discussions with some potential third-party sponsors for this. So we just need to understand how they'd be contributing to it. Would it be on an infrastructure or on an operating ongoing basis? And once we have that information, we'll know better how things would deploy over the longer term. So we are trying to make sure that when this does go forward, it's going to have minimal impact overall on the taxpayer.
Councillor?
So my question again is about Town Park as opposed to the Town Square. And I'm wondering if this could be turned into something that we do for sure at Town Square, and we take a look at it from a pilot standpoint and then see whether the people around Town Park and others find it valuable. That's all I'm wondering, and I don't know how we can get that on the table as an amendment to the amendment, or if it's even useful, but I just feel uncomfortable saying it should go in Town Park when we haven't had consultation with some of the neighbors and neighborhoods and others there and the people who use the park, because that park is used all the time. So I'm just wondering if we can, if Councillor Gilliland would consider having this reduced by half so that we get it done in Town Square, and we then do a report back and get some public consultation on the parks, because I think a park is a little different than the Town Square.
Councillor, that would be contrary. Huh? No? Yeah, it doesn't matter. I'm just saying that you're removing it, so you'd have to vote on removing it. You couldn't add in certain ones at this point. The amendments to remove it be contrary. I'm just saying. Councillor?
I'm not sure what you said there. You're talking to the CEO, and I think it's probably important. So if you could tell me what that.
What I'm hearing is Town Square is not in the report. Correct, Mr. Seal?
The what is not in the report? Sorry.
Town Square.
Oh, okay.
This is not included in this.
Oh, these are just two parks then. Okay.
You? Any other comments or questions? Councillor Thompson, first time.
Thank you. In our capital sheets, it says it's a finance project. So through you to Mrs. Wainwright Van Kessel, it links it to our corporate technology strategic plan. And so I guess if council decided to defer this for another year, what would be the impact to our strategic objectives from that plan for this year or 2024?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So if it was deferred for another year, it would just be a delay in the deployment of this. So we have other projects that we are definitely working on as well, but it's something that's an opportunity for us to move forward with.
Councillor.
Thank you.
Councillor Gilliland, second time.
Thank you. I just kind of wanted to, for clarity, for Councillor Weese, that in the report, it was specific to Stuart Burnett Park and Town Square Park. And with my discussions with Ms. Wainwright Ben Kessel, that Town Park or Town Square rather, was already intended in having Wi-Fi implementation at that facility. Hence why when I spoke, I have no problem with having Wi-Fi in our town facilities such as Town Square, the ACC, the SARC, through you, Mr. Chair, to Ms. Wainwright Ben Kessel. It looks like you want to chime in and to confirm that perhaps.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, the Aurora Town Square will have outdoor Wi-Fi in the square, but not in the parking lot area.
Councillor?
Thank you. And so again, I don't want to repeat everything that I had said about the park and the project. It's just at this time, it's something I'm not in favor of. I also question the data privacy as well. And that's also another can of worms that maybe we can talk about at a different time. But I think for the big reasons that I've mentioned above, that's why at this time I like to be removed.
Any other comments, questions? None for call the vote. Opposed to removing this from the budget. Call vote. Councillor Thompson. Yes. That carries. Seven point seven, Councillor Gilliland, this is yours as well. Would you like to move as is? Seconder. Councillor Gaertner. Councillor Gilliland, floor is yours.
Thank you. I mean, again, this budget process is completely different, and it's also only the second time we've done a 3-year outlook. And I guess in the past we were proposed with the current ask for the subsequent year. And essentially, again, I'm looking at this as wanting to see it as conditionally approved, because I want to see each position presented that way. It's not clear when it does come back. It comes back as in a pre-approved item, and it gets lost in translation. I want to see the full picture in 2025. I want to give the staff an opportunity to reflect on the need of the position as we ebb and flow. From what I understand, all 2025 and all 2026 asks are a July 1 start. So I don't see what the rush is if we were to wait until the end of 2024 to discuss 2025 and wait to the end of 2025 to discuss 2026. I don't really see that rush. And I also noticed the way hires are being presented with this July 1, we're only seeing half that salary. And it doesn't really give the full picture, in my opinion. So while I'm not saying I'm not approving, I would prefer it be conditionally approved and being shown that way and presented that way. And that is why I have used this language for the next budget, so I can see that full picture.
Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. Just some clarity on this. This wouldn't affect any hires that we're doing in 2024 with a July 1st start, even though it's half 2024, half 2025. Could I just get clarity on? If this was to move forward, it wouldn't affect those.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. So any of the ones with a start date in 2024 would not be affected by this. This amendment refers to any of the ones that have start dates starting in 2025 or 2026, which those would go through a budget reaffirmation process as we are required to come back annually as under the Municipal Act.
So you, Mr. Mayor, if we didn't approve this, would those hires, they'd show up in the budget, but they wouldn't necessarily be new asks because we would be approving a 3-year budget now?
Mayor Mrakas.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So what will happen is towards the end of next year, we'll come back with the budget, which would be very similar to the one we did in 2021, which was the 2-year outlook one. We would still have the information as to what was approved or adopted, as it is now under Strong Mayors, as part of this budget. And then we would also show any changes. So if there's anything that's changing compared to what gets adopted in this budget for years 25 and 26, we would show those changes. At that point in time, council has the opportunity to provide amendments to the mayor's budget just as we go through this process. We go through it again and then again for 2026. But the focus on the actual presentation of the material will be more on the changes, but the information about the FTEs would all still be there.
Councillor.
I guess if this was to move forward, the difference would be that it would automatically trigger a new request in 2025, 2026. Would it be treated any differently than if they would show up there, because it's not asking for them to be removed, it's asking for them to be after a review in 2025 and 2026. I'm just trying to determine the difference between if this moves forward or if we move forward normally.
So, Councillor, just I'll just read from the Municipal Act, Section 291, other years mandatory review of annual budget. For the second and each subsequent year to which a multi-year budget applies, the municipality shall, in the year or the immediately preceding year, review the budget for that year. So it's in the act that it comes back to us on a yearly basis for us to look at the item within there, regardless of whether we pass a multi-year budget or not.
Yeah, what I'm trying to determine is whether they would be new items or existing, or they'd still be there based on this. It's just triggering an additional review, which would happen naturally. Whether this moves forward or not, I don't think anything really changes, to be honest.
No, you could have new hires that show up on next year's budget. You could have reduced hires that show up on next year's budget. You could have.
I mean, I don't mind moving
Yeah.
forward with this because I like to review, and if this is kind of putting an exclamation mark on it, that's okay with me. If it's highlighting it, that's okay with me. It sounds like we do it anyway, but I don't have an issue with this. I think it's consistent with what we would do anyway.
Thank you. Councillor Weese.
Yeah, thank you. And just a clarification here, it says that any new staffing hires, I assume is both full-time equivalents and part-time people through you to maybe.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it refers to the whole budget.
Sorry?
It refers to the entire budget
budget.
for 25 and 26.
Okay.
Because the whole thing will come back to council, including the FTEs and any other budget asks that are in there. As
So any-
part of the municipal act that's required.
Thank you. That's clear. So any part-time people that we hire this year that we have to choose to bring them back again for another year, or we turn them into a full-time employee or whatever. But it's, again, I like this because it's conditionally improved pending the review. So, because like Councillor Gallo, I think it's appropriate that we learn about these positions and we have an opportunity to speak about them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gilliland, second time.
Thank you. I just kind of wanted to, I guess, finish what I was trying to articulate, and I had a tough time on how to formulate this because as much as I understand it does come back, the way in which it's presented, and I did look back to see how it was presented, is not clear. And I just don't like it seeing as approved or now it's adopted. And when we do get those reports, it shows us approved. And if there's any changes, then there's additional. And I like to be able to see it as labeled as conditionally approved and presented as that, because the preconceived notion is that we are approving it now for 2025 and 2026. And it to me, it's like an assumption. And I guess I'm hoping I'm trying to be clear, just through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Staff, is that the way it's being presented to the council, it'll show conditionally, it'll show as something, it's a new ask with those business cases, as opposed to the way it's being labeled as approved in 2023 or 2024 or whatever it is. It's just that way it looks is not clear. And otherwise, the first thing I was going to do is say, none of them are going to be approved. Everybody just come back. And I'm trying to have a compromise here because that's just the way that I want to see it presented. I actually don't like the way we're doing this 3-year outlook for the staff and having this pre-approved, because when it comes back, it's hard to remember how it looks and what the preconceived notion and the rationale behind it, because I want to give time for staff to reflect on the need. And we're in the time where we're trying to cut back. There's a lot of people that are looking for employment out there, and we're in really, really tough times. And I just think it's prudent for us to put a highlight on this, that we are paying attention, and we need to ensure that if those hires are going to be what we really need in 2025 and in 2026, that we're sure. And I understand that these will automatically be there, but how it's being presented is how I would like it to be seen as conditional with that language. And I want to actually see it as something that is a new hire. I don't want this as shown as something that's there and we're making something new on top of that. So if you're actually asking for one new employee in 2025 this year, I want to see in 2025 that you're asking for one new hire again. And if there's an additional one, I want to see as 2, not, oh, no changes plus 1, because it gives a preconceived notion. And this is the best way that I felt that I could give some accountability and transparency for that. And remembering when we approach those budgets, that we have those business cases in front of us and allow staff that time to reflect. That's all.
Mr. CO.
Through Mr. Chair, I'm not sure how we pull out one part of a 25 or 26 budget and show it as conditional when in effect, the entire 25 and 26 budget is conditional. The purpose of multi-year budgeting is to give a view of the whole 3 years and how they play out as one strategic plan. And so it allows council to make decisions about 2024 with the confidence that they have a sense of what 25 and 26 would look like as part of a 3-year plan, as opposed to showing up next year with a brand new plan and throwing on the table whatever we throw on. So 25 and 26, according to the Act, are really conditional budgets in the sense that you're saying this looks like a good path for the 3 years in terms of the tax increases and the hiring and the things that are in the budget capital plan. But we have to, council has to review the entire budget in 25 and 26. They don't really have any force or effect until they're reviewed by council prior to the year that they come into effect.
I guess my only comment is it's very hard for me to sit here in 2023 and justify and say, yeah, you need that person in July 2025. It's very hard for me to wrap our hand around. I think a lot of people, and especially in the private sector right now, they're thinking about how they can cut costs and how they can understand where that bottom dollar is coming from, because a lot of companies right now are seeing the decline with the economy. But yet here we are sitting here thinking, oh, we want pie in the sky, and we're going to have all these extra staff for 2025 and 2026. So forgive me if I want to have some sort of opportunity where it's clear in 2024 when I'm looking at the budget that a certain department is asking for one additional new staff and it's showing as an additional new staff as opposed to pre-approved, no change unless there's XY. So I guess my concern is how is it going to be shown as clear as mud that this is a new ask? Because the way I'm understanding it, and when we do these budgets and it's coming back conditional, it just shows as pre-approved. And if there is no changes, there's really no change, but it's just kind of there if you really want to look at it. And it just, for me, it's just misleading. And I just don't like it the way it's being presented. I don't know how you fix that. I don't know how you present it, maybe through Mr. CEO to Ms. Weimer-Kessel, but I would just like that extra layer of reviewing and seeing it presented as new at that budget. How do we do that then?
Ms. Weimer-Kessel, do you want to attempt to answer that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So when we look at, as for example, the 21 budget, which was a 2-year look at the outlook that was established in 2020. All the information that we had there in 2020, highlighting all the budget changes under our base growth, capital enhancement selection, like sections, was all included there. So any of those positions that we have there currently today that are shown in your budget binders for 25 and 26 that are under those categorizations, you're going to still see that in that table. What we do is we add an additional box at the bottom that highlights any changes. It doesn't mean that we're just necessarily only limited to those items in the box. We can go and reevaluate things that are suggested for or proposed for both years. In addition to that, the business cases that are there today for those positions that start in 25 and 26, those business cases will still be included. So we're still providing the same information that we have today in today's budget for 25 and 26 in those two documents as well. So it will have the same level of detail and the same information there. And it is not saying that when this budget gets adopted, that those positions we're free to start going and essentially planning to hire them in those years. We have to go through this budget process annually. The budget has to get readopted. And until that happens for 25, we cannot go and start hiring those additional staff. We have to wait for that process to happen. There's potential that something could happen in the next year. The world changes, as we very well know. And someone could decide, you know what, this position for this department, it makes much more sense to do this instead. And it could get swapped out. It could be changed for something else. So there's things that can happen and can change. And that's why we itemize what changed to make it clear for council to understand. This is what you looked at last year. These are the changes. But what you looked at last year does not mean it's fully ingrained in stone. It's still an opportunity for amendments to come against those as well.
Councillor.
Thank you. And I did look at that snippet and I did have a peek at that. So I guess my question is, as opposed to looking at something as being whole, because it looks like as its whole, it'll say approved in 2023. When it comes back, it's just going to be, if there's no new staff, it's not going to show any change. It's not going to show a change in the budget other than the fact that you're going to have, is it going to show as new, or is it just going to show as pre-approved?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it will show what was adopted, but even though it was adopted for 2025 and 26, it can still be changed. It's about showing how the budget changed. But the thing is, anything that's adopted in this budget can still be changed. All the information we have today will still be there for those new positions. They will still show under capital impact, growth, or enhancement as those positions are today, and the business cases will be there. So I think there's enough information there in the budget binder for council and the public to be able to see that these positions are not part of that starting opening FTE number for 2025, that they would be added in those years, because you will see this is at the top section, what was the adopted budget, but the starting number is the number of FTEs that we have at the end of 24. Any of the new ones that we happen to add, for example, in finance, we've got one proposed for 25 that will show that one position. And then it will show, okay, this is what was adopted, and here's now the changes. So any of the pluses or minuses that happen relating to it. And then you'll see the new proposed budget. But it will be clear that those positions are there and that they are new in that year.
Councillor, yeah, I'm going to let you go 20 seconds above because I let the delegate go 20 seconds more. So go ahead, Councillor. You got 20 seconds.
Thank you. I listen. I understand that we're going to be looking at this on a yearly basis. I just don't like how we have this pie in the sky in 3 years. If it was my choice, I would just say we remove them completely from the budget and just make everybody come back new. But, this is kind of the motion I have in front. To be clear, in the past, I know that when we've been presented some budgets, there's been some other council members around the table, whether it's a budget or if we're looking at something else that's midterm, there'd be comments made and quote unquote, now reminding council members that these things are already conditionally and pre-approved and that we should be looking at the changes. And, I guess as a new councillor at the time, I really focused on, the newer changes because we had already pre-approved these. And I guess what I've learned in the last 5 years now, and when coming back in 2025 and 2026, is that no, we should be looking at all of these pre-approvals with equally the same scrutiny. And so that is the reason why I wanted to make sure that that was here. And if this is something that we do already, and I want to see it labeled as conditionally approved as opposed to approved, because right now it's labeled as approved, I just want something there to make it seem like accountable and stick out and change, because it's this adopted thing is so different, then so be it. I just want to make sure that it's clear as mud to council that when it does come back, we are looking at this with fresh eyes and a fresh year and a fresh budget.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I'm going to try and clarify it or simplify it. Through you to Mrs. Wainwright Van Kessel. You spoke about the finance section within the budget binder, and certainly it does identify 24, 25, and 26. And as you noted, in 2025, it does say that this is the proposed complement of full-time staff, and that there is one new position being proposed for 2025. And within the budget binder, there's a business case for that position that's supposed to come on in 2025. I believe it is the grant management advisor position. Looking ahead to the next year, the next budget proposal process. I would assume then that it would be similar in that, again, you would see the 2025, it would say, here's our staffing, here's the one new position that was previously approved through the multi-year budget process, and here's the business case for it. And so the information is all there for members of council. So it is completely transparent in terms of what that new position is, what the business case is for that new position. And at that time, should council not be in support of that position, any one member of council as the new process could put forward an amendment to remove or not go forward with that position. Is that clear? Correct? Sorry.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's correct.
Councillor.
And that's always been, that's been the process in the last few multi-year budgets that we've done, is that even though it does identify for planning purposes a 3-year span. It is, as the CAO mentioned, still a conditional approval, and we go through that process. All of the new hires will be identified in that year, along with the business case that you see before us here. It's all carried forward for us to be able to further deliberate if we want, or have further discussion on whether or not it's warranted or not to push or not. So to me, the motion's redundant.
You, Councillor Gaertner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Ms. Rainwright Van Castle. So will it say that they're conditionally approved from the 2024 budget? Will that be very clear?
Ms. Mayor Van Castle.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So what it will say in the budget is it will be what was adopted as part of the multi-year budget. But that is essentially all conditionally approved because it has to be reviewed annually as part of the budget process.
Councillor.
Do you want to put a blue star beside it? No, seriously, because, you know, budget is long, and if you read it thoroughly, it's quite intense. So just some further notation, please.
Ms. Wainwright Van Castle.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So that will be described clearly in the budget and policy section that's in the budget binder that'll explain how the multi-year budget works and how there is the opportunity to review and make changes to the budget. And that'll be your blue star.
You're not giving me the star, eh?
Sir.
I'm done.
Any other comments or questions? Just think it's redundant as well, so call the vote. Councillor Kemp? No, Councillor Kemp's no. That's defeated. Hey. Confirming bylaw. Councillor Thompson. Second. Councillor Gallo. All those in favor? Opposed, that carries. Or I do call for adjournment. I did just want to say a few words. Mr. Chair, it's all right. You know, this budget is one that follows our budget principles of a balanced approach that aligns with our fiscal responsibilities while preserving the well-being and growth of our town. This budget also sees one of the lowest tax levies in York Region while providing incredible service to our residents and investing in our future with projects like Town Square. And I want to thank staff for all the work that they've done over the year. Now, in my opinion, some of the approved amendments to the budget, specifically the delay to hires for Town Square and reduced funding for Aurora Sports Hall of Fame, do nothing more, in my opinion, than undermine the town's ability to succeed and build our town in a positive manner. Now, I'm committed to ensuring that our town thrives, and I will use every tool at my disposal to safeguard the interests of our residents, ensure that our community is set up for success now and for generations to come. This is why I will be exercising the rights of the mayor's office through the act to veto these two approved amendments from tonight. I will be submitting the necessary documentation to council and the clerk and have it published on the website for the public tomorrow. With that, I'll call for motion to adjourn. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Weese, all those in favor? Opposed, that carries. We are adjourned.